Good morning. Good morning. Could you come down to the center area? We're about to get going. Hopefully you've enjoyed your breakfast, and grab a cup of coffee and just come on down and we'll get started.
Hello. Good morning, everybody. Good, thank you. Good morning. Good morning. It is Monday, I know, but it's sunny, it's nice, and we're at Fenway Park. Great. Yes, I know. Pretty exciting. So we're going to jump right in. I know folks are still making their way down, but we want to get started because we know we have an online viewership, correct, Peter? Yes, so there's folks watching from the interwebs out there. Hello, good morning, wherever you are. My job is simply to welcome you all to Fenway Park. My name is Becca Salwasser. I'm the Executive Vice President of Social Impact here at the Boston Red Sox, as well as the Executive Director of the Red Sox Foundation. And like I said, I have the honor of kicking today's event off and thanking you all for being here on behalf of my colleagues from FSM and the Boston Red Sox that join us here this morning. I think to start, I just want to begin with gratitude. Thank you all for making your way into Fenway. I know the traffic was tricky this morning. It's Monday morning after a great weekend, so thank you for being here. I want to thank Peter for your leadership with the Greater New England Minority Supplier Development Council, which is the longest acronym I will ever say in my life. Thank you to my colleagues here again, FSM, Red Sox, for pulling this event together. It takes a lot to make these things happen, so thank you all. Most importantly, huge thanks to all the business owners here this morning. We're here to celebrate, elevate, and recognize you and your efforts and hard work. Because I know you'll see this on a slide from Peter later on. Together we rise. That was one of the great quotes that I saw on one of the decks that you gave me, Peter. And it's so true, right? Together we rise. It's what I love about the mission of GNE MSDC. The mission, as I'm sure you all know, is not only to expand business opportunities for MBEs, but also to create mutually beneficial links between corporate members and MBEs. So the ultimate outcome is adding economic value to the supply chain while increasing economic opportunities for the minority business community. So in summary, GNE MSDC is doing about 100 critically important, critically amazing things all at the same time. And here at the Red Sox, we couldn't be more proud to support those efforts. It's truly our honor to be part of this conversation this morning and to help increase those economic opportunities. I hope you all have gotten a chance and will get a chance to connect with each other, but also a lot of the members here from the Red Sox community to help build those relationships. Over the past 18 months here at the Red Sox, we've strengthened our commitment to equity, diversity, inclusion, both internally here at the front office with our employees, but also externally with individuals, organizations, corporations, people, and communities at large. So I'm excited to be part of what I know is not just a moment, but a movement. And so that's probably enough for me. Now I'm quoting Hamilton. But I did want to share just a bit about today's agenda and events so you know what to expect. After my welcome address, I'll pass the mic to Peter, who's going to share a little bit about the business case for economic inclusion. After that, we'll have a virtual interview between Sean Wooden, who's the Connecticut treasurer, and Donna Latson-Gittins from More Advertising. After that, we'll have a panel discussion for how to do business with sports organizations with some of my favorite individuals from the other teams here in Boston. That's going to be moderated by Mark Lev, who's the president of Fenway Sports Management. The panelists include Tim Zhu, who's the CFO here at the Red Sox, Nicole Federico, who I used to work with at the Boston Celtics, Tom Grilk from BAA, who I know is here right there, hi Tom, and Fred Bunker from Boston Bruins. After that, we're going to have a very important conversation about access to capital. That's going to be moderated by Michael Granger from GNE MSDC, and the panelists will include Ron Molina Brantley from Berkshire Bank, Justin Dawkins from Colab Capital, and Larry Andrews from Maths Growth Capital Corporation. We'll wrap the day with probably what you're all been waiting for, which is a special interview from David Ortiz, which is pretty incredible. He'll be introduced by Pam Ken, who I see right now. Hi, Pam. She's the Vice President of Community, Alumni, and Player Relations here at the Boston Red Sox. David will be interviewed by Donna, and Donna is here as well somewhere. Donna, there you are. Yes, hi, Donna. Donna has a great opportunity to interview David. We're going to close and wrap by 1 o'clock. We'll be having some lunch and some more networking opportunities right before we wrap at 1. So, now that we got the agenda out of the way, last thing I will say before I pass the mic to Peter is who Peter is. Peter, as I think you all know, is the president and CEO of the Greater New England Minority Supplier Development Council. He was also the founder, board chair, and CEO and president of the Urban Financial Group. Similarly, he was the founder, chairman, CEO, president, and acting chief lending officer of the Communities Bank. Prior to founding the bank, Peter was the founder and president of Hearst Capital Partners, a financial advisory and merchant banking firm. Not surprisingly, because clearly he's an overachiever, Peter began his career practicing law. He was an attorney in the General Counsel's Office of the Federal Reserve Board and was an associate with the Washington, D.C. law firm Steptoe and Johnson. He's got way more degrees than me from small places like Harvard and Duke and sits on about 100 board of directors. I could go on, but I'll leave you with this. In my sleuthing last night online, I found out that Peter was born in Houston, which, as we all know, is the land of the Astros. So, Peter, I'd like you to begin with who is your favorite baseball team? Why don't you come up and share that with all of us? Oh, I think we have a small gift for Peter, too.
I just wanted to thank you for everything that you do to support the organization, and it's been great to get to know you, and we've got a little something. Now the Red Sox, if you say Astros right now, that'll be a problem. I'll be taking that back, so.
So thank you, Becca, and thank you, Mark. And just for the record, I am a Red Sox fan, and I shared this with Mark. He invited my wife and I to the game that they won against the Astros 12-3. And I suggested to him that anyone who plays sports or watches sports is superstitious. And if he wants to win the World Series next year, he should make sure I'm at all of the playoff games because they'll go all of the way. But Becca, thank you for that very kind introduction. And thank all of you for coming this morning. I'm going to start off with what I hope sets the table for not only today, but a broader conversation about why this work is important. And as Becca indicated, our theme this year is Together We Rise. It was a takeoff from the young poet who spoke at President Biden's inauguration, but I think it really does epitomize what the opportunity is for this moment in time. And what I'm going to talk today about, for very briefly, is the business case for economic inclusion. And the reason I'm going to focus on this, I think that we have often talked about economic inclusion in terms of a moral perspective, and it is certainly the right thing to do, but I think people do what's in their self-interest more often than they do what's right. So I'm going to try to make sure that I make the case today to explain why I think that economic inclusion is something that's the smart thing to do. This quote is from Jim Carville, who some of you are probably too young to remember him. He was involved with former President Bill Clinton when he ran for office. And when Clinton was running, he said it's very simple. It's always the economy. So with that perspective, I'm going to talk about two things. Economic inclusion includes not only diversity, equity, and inclusion, but it also includes minority business development. Each one is important, each one drives the economy, and each one is something that public sector and private sector leaders need to focus on. In terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion, let me just briefly touch on why I think it's important. You probably heard about the McKinsey consulting firm. Well, they've done 3 studies where they looked at over 1,000 large companies in 16 countries. And they concluded that companies with ethnic diversity at the C-suite level and the board level have superior financial performance compared to those companies that don't have ethnic diversity at the C-suite level and the board level. So again, looking at 1,000 companies in 16 countries, they came to that conclusion. So for all of you who are running companies here in Fenway, and those of you who are participating virtually, keep these numbers in mind. And if you're interested, I can send you links to these studies because they're really eye-opening. But we're today here to talk about, most importantly, minority business development. And let me spend the rest of my time, and I'm going to run through this quickly, sharing with you why minority business development is important. The fundamental reason it's important is that there's a racial wealth gap in this country. This racial wealth gap is a moral tragedy, but more importantly, it's an economic tragedy. The median net worth of a black family is only 13% of the median net worth of a white family. The median net worth of a Hispanic family is only 19% of the median net worth of a white family. Now, why is this important? Wealth, or the lack thereof, affects a whole lot of things. It affects whether you can afford season tickets to the Red Sox, the Celtics, or the Bruins, and more generally, it affects the spending power of your family. Wealth, or the lack thereof, also affects where you live, the quality of health care you receive, the types of schools your children can attend. Wealth, or the lack thereof, affects whether you can afford to buy a home. It affects the type of career you can have. It affects whether you can afford to start or grow your business. And a lot of you here today and a lot of you participating virtually are entrepreneurs, so that last point is very critical from where you sit. More generally, the racial wealth gap has an impact on the U.S. economy. McKinsey, the same consulting firm that I mentioned earlier, they've done a study that says over the next several years, the racial wealth gap is going to cost the U.S. economy between $1 trillion to $1.5 trillion. That's more than the nickels and dimes I got in my pocket. That's a lot of money. Closer to home, the Massachusetts Taxpayer Foundation published a research piece earlier this year that said the racial wealth gap is going to cost the Commonwealth $25 billion over the next 5 years. It affects wages, housing, investments, and wealth. That's real money for the Commonwealth, and $1 trillion to $1.5 trillion is real money for the U.S. economy. I'm here to share with you that I think minority business development is an effective lever to reduce the racial wealth gap in this country and here in the Commonwealth. Why? Minority businesses make 4 important contributions. They generate economic output, they create and maintain jobs, especially with people of color, they generate tax revenue, and the owners of these companies constitute a cadre of servant leaders in the communities in which they run their businesses. Just to put this in perspective, this is national data. Nationally, there are almost 1 million minority-owned businesses with employees. Because again, one of the promises is that minority-owned businesses generate employment opportunities. There are almost 1 million minority-owned businesses in this country with employees that generate $1.1 trillion in revenue. They have 7.1 million employees, and their average revenue is $1.2 million. So that is really something that we all need to focus on, irrespective of what business we're in, because that is real economic juice. Closer to home, in 2019, the Greater New England Council commissioned an economic impact study. At that time, we had about 200 minority-owned businesses we've certified. That study was done by an independent firm, and it found the following. The GDP contribution for those 200 businesses that we certified was $4.3 billion. Those businesses, supported wages of $1.9 billion, created 33,000 jobs, and at the minority businesses in our network in New England, about 20,000 jobs, and 65% of their employees were people of color. So what that study did, it looked at the direct economic output. We get tax return data when we certify and recertify businesses, so it aggregated all of that tax return data. Minority-owned businesses also have an indirect impact in that they're buying goods and services from other minority-owned businesses, so it captured that number. And then the employees of the minority-owned businesses, those 20,000, as well as the employees of the companies that they're buying goods and services from, they all spend money. So you add all of that up, and the economic contribution was $4.3 billion. And in Massachusetts, the GDP contribution was $2.6 billion. The wages supported by Massachusetts MBEs, our Massachusetts MBEs, was $1.2 million. They supported 21,000 jobs, and at the minority businesses in Massachusetts themselves, they have 13,500 employees. So again, if you think about the first point I made about why the racial wealth gap is important, if you look at those kind of numbers, you can buy more Red Sox tickets, more Celtics tickets, more Bruins tickets. This is a snapshot of what our council looks like now. We have close to 280 minority-owned businesses we've certified. They have $2.9 billion in revenue. And in all of the 6 New England states, we even have one minority-owned business in Vermont. And this is an ethnic background of the minority-owned businesses we've certified. If you add the percentages up, 61% of the minority-owned businesses we've certified are owned by blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. And if you look at the far right column, 53% of that $2.9 billion in revenue is generated by companies owned by blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. So that's New England-wide. Same is true in the Commonwealth. In the Commonwealth, of the 147 minority-owned businesses we've certified, 61% of them are owned by blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. The Commonwealth has $1.8 billion in aggregate revenue. 53% of the aggregate revenue in the Commonwealth is generated by companies owned by blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. And this is important because this shows you we have minority-owned businesses we've certified in all categories. We categorize our network. Category 1 is less than $1 million in revenue. Category 2 is $1 million to $10 million. Category 3 is $10 million to $50 million, and Category 4 is north of $50 million. So in every category, we have a substantial amount of representation. And if you look at these numbers, of the $2.9 billion in aggregate revenue, only $30 million of that comes from companies that have less than $1 million in revenue. So that really undercuts the presumption that everyone has that all minority-owned businesses are small and struggling. Some are, but as you can see from these numbers, a lot of these companies are seasoned, successful, and really adding a lot to not only the regional economy and the national economy, but the Massachusetts economy. And finally, one of the things I want to mention, as I indicated, one of the real benefits and contributions of minority-owned businesses is that their owners represent a cadre of servant leaders. In our network, there are hundreds of names that I could mention, but just to mention a few names, Donna Latson-Gittens, who's going to be appearing today, she runs More Advertising, is a servant leader. Anthony Samuel, Sion Cogdell, Ramon Peralta, Richard Taylor. There are a lot of men and women in New England on MBEs that we've certified, and even MBEs we haven't certified. And those owners are not just running successful businesses, but they're giving their time and talent to make the communities in which they operate stronger. So thank you very much. And now it is my pleasure to transition to what I think is going to be a very interesting conversation with State Treasurer Shawn Wooden and our own Donna Latson Gittens. Before we start, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce them both. Shawn Wooden was sworn in as Connecticut's 83rd State Treasurer in 2019. Before he became State Treasurer, he had a 21-year career as a successful investment attorney, and he was the City Council President in Hartford, Connecticut. Shawn was born and raised in Hartford, and he's one of 6 children. He earned a 4-year scholarship to Trinity College. He later attended New York University Law School, and after law school, he had a very long and successful career at the Day Pitney Law Firm, where he became a partner and he led Day Pitney's public plan investment practice. Shawn has been recognized as a Connecticut super lawyer for securities and corporate finance, business, corporate pensions, and investments. He's also been named one of the 25 investment professionals to watch, and Savoy magazine identified him as one of the most influential black lawyers in the country. Shawn, controls a lot of money. He's the sole trustee for $37 billion in Connecticut retirement plan and trust funds. He also administers a $26 billion debt management program. He manages over $25 billion in annual cash transactions, and he has a seat on a 25-person quasi-governmental authorities board related to housing, finance, student loans, air and water ports, venture capital, the lottery, private sector retirement security, and a host of other areas. He's the only black elected state treasurer in the country and the only black elected official statewide in New England. He's the proud father of 2 teenage boys and a very devoted son. And I took the liberty of referring to him as Shawn because in addition to being the state treasurer, he is a close personal friend of mine, and I'm very proud of him, not only what he does in his role as treasurer, but the way he lives his life and represents his community. As proud as I am of Shawn, I'm even prouder of Donna Latson Gittens. Donna, was a really successful person in broadcast television. She left that, very successful career to become an entrepreneur. Armed with a creative vision and passion for community, she decided to start a new venture that would have a new form of advertising, one that leveraged the power of media and strong creative to effect much needed social change. Over the ensuing 20 years since she started her business, More Advertising has marketed sustainable change at the social, institutional, and personal level on matters of considerable public importance. In addition to things she does outside of work, More Advertising has effectively raised awareness on a variety of important issues, including opioid abuse, gambling, HIV prevention, and domestic violence. She's also opened access for issues like affordable housing, higher education, health, and employment. As an example, More has implemented 5 campaigns in recent years aimed at reducing the deadly effect of opioid abuse, and did so, in request, at the request of Governor Baker. In addition to those kind of things, Donna, through more advertising, created a campaign with the tagline, "The Agency of Change." Her public position, her activism, and her expertise in social change has prompted countless invitations to join a number of boards that are making a difference not only in the greater Boston area, but also throughout Massachusetts. She, as you might imagine, has been a very key member of the Red Sox marketing team for a number of years, and she actually helped implement a recent strategy, Take the Lead, an innovative program embraced by all Boston professional sports teams to stand up to racism and to stand up to hate speech. She's received a number of awards, and one of the things I'm sure she is most proud of, two things. One is we have our version of the Shark Tank competition. We call it the Bear's Den. Donna was the inaugural winner of the Shark Tank competition in 2014, but I'm sure the non-personal thing she's most proud of is that she has 4 Boston Red Sox championship rings. So she really is a Red Sox family member through and through. She's a member of the Massachusetts Marketing Partnership. She's on the executive committee of the Associated Industries of Massachusetts. She is just an incredible person. She has a husband who is a great guy, Robin Gittens, and she has 2 children. And her daughter, I had the pleasure of meeting at the game that the Red Sox won 12-3 against the Astros. Mark Hent. Her daughter is probably the biggest baseball fan I've ever met of any team, but especially of the Red Sox. So without further ado, I would like to share an interview that Donna and Sean Wooden taped because I think it's very appropriate and very on point for the topic today. So, ladies and gentlemen, you're next going to hear from Sean Wooden, interviewed by Donna Latson-Gittens.
Treasurer Wooden, you lead the way in addressing the racial wealth gap in Connecticut. How has your experience as an investment lawyer prepared you for the all-consuming role of being treasurer for such a big state? And what were the biggest issues you faced specifically when you went into office?
First of all, thank you. It's great to be with you for this session. And fortunately, I felt very prepared, having spent 21 years as an investment lawyer, and not only just operating in the space, but having the state of Connecticut as one of my clients that I represented in the country. So I came into the office very familiar with many aspects of the role of treasurer and knowing some members of the team. So that allowed me to just hit the ground running just on the job itself, whether it's managing our 45 billion pension fund, our debt issuance, the basics. And I think, I'm just kind of thinking about it now, I think that gave me more runway to be creative, to do some things a little differently from what perhaps other treasurers do, because I care passionately about issues just generally affecting people. And I always say, whether it's treasurer, state representative, member of Congress, we all serve people, and we get into public life to make people's lives better. And so that preparedness prepared me for the job and just gave me more space and capacity to think about having a bigger impact than just investing and issuing bonds.
So one of the big things that you're known for is an amazing, innovative idea that came as a result of a reaction to the loss of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery. Please tell everybody what spurred you to do it, how did you get the idea, and then explain your partnership with the Ford Foundation.
Sure. And as you mentioned, the death of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and culminating in the murder of George Floyd, led to actually conversations at my dinner table with my sons. Mm-hmm. And with respect to Ahmaud Arbery, I have a son who's a runner, and he actually asked me whether it was still safe to jog in the neighborhood. And that just moved me in a very personal way to say I wanted to give voice to what was happening. So I actually started writing an op-ed after that conversation. And the day that I thought I was finished was the day that George Floyd was murdered. Mm. And I had to write a little more. But in that, right, and part of what I thought about is what's my audience? What's my unique role in space that I occupy that I could lean in on this moment? And what I did was make a call to corporate America to get off the sidelines and to be a constructive force for positive change in our country around racial disparities. And that led to an overwhelming response, positive response by CEOs of financial services firms in particular, who reached out, which led to ultimately a partnership with Darren Walker and the Ford Foundation to launch what we call the Corporate Call to Action Coalition for Equity and Opportunity, with a specific focus on closing the racial wealth gap. And again, we have to think about what's unique spaces that we occupy and how we could bring that to bear. And now 18 of the leading financial services institutions in the country are partners of ours, over 27 trillion assets under management represented in this group, over 700,000 employees in these organizations. And for the past year, we've been working on tools to have an impact, both looking in the mirror, and that's what I ask the CEOs in their companies to do, to see inward, how can you have an impact within your organizations, but not stopping there. Also looking out of our windows and how we could impact the communities in which we live in and in which our companies are headquartered in and our employees work in, but just having a broader impact in closing those disparities. And it's been a wonderful partnership so far. Mm-hmm. And still, it's a long-term commitment. This wasn't like a flash in the pan. It was very important that it not be just this moment post George Floyd, but that it be very serious and long-term to make structural change. And so that is what we're doing.
Describe some of the elements of it. That's talent pipeline that companies can do internally, the amount of money that you're putting towards capital to access by MBEs.
Sure. So one of the important things to this is clear goals and objectives that can be measured in terms of outcomes, and a level of transparency and accountability, right? So those are principles guiding this work. And the first major initiative in February of this year was the agreement of the coalition to voluntarily disclose EEO1 data. Currently, estimates are only 4% of public companies who have to report this data to the federal government. This is workforce demographics, race, gender, ethnicity, and only 4% currently voluntarily disclose it publicly. Mm-hmm. And so getting this coalition to agree to take that step, they're being market leaders and pushing the industry, and greater transparency into what corporate America looks like, for us is a first step to having accountability, measuring progress or lack of progress. Other initiatives include, you referenced the talent pipeline.
Yeah.
This coalition has agreed to make available 10,000 internships and micro internships a year for people of color. And this is looking at the organizations, everything from the entry level, getting those pipelines going, to all the way up to the corporate boardrooms. But every level of the organization, we're focused on in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion in there. Additionally, a $10 billion commitment has been made to invest in communities of color in a range of activities. Those investments would take place in, whether it's housing, businesses, supplier chains. We call it the low-hanging fruit of the, every year there's, millions spent in procurement. And that's an easy place for these corporations to just diversify their procurement pipeline. And we focus on that. And so there are a host of areas, all intended to significantly move the needle within these corporations, as well as outside and beyond their corporate walls as well.
That's pretty amazing. Do you ever see a chance or an opportunity to grow that to other states? It sounds like you're the model for this.
Well, it already is national with, some of our partners are BlackRock, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, Invesco, Franklin Templeton, Morgan Stanley, Citi, Aberdeen Standard, so those State Street, but so they're all over the place
Right.
at this point. But in terms of growing, when we launched, we intentionally kept the group smaller than the demand actually to participate, just because the intent was this to be very much be a working group. And once you get past a certain size, it's really hard to come together and do real work. But the idea is to expand for greater corporate participation in this effort, now that more of the work in the goals and objectives. And I should mention, I didn't launch this with asking CEOs to sign on to a 5-point pledge that I created. I launched it asking them to commit to move the needle and to bring their intellectual resources and their actual capital to bear, and to help create the model, right? Because the idea is for this to be sustainable, but not to impose something. But you help us figure out, with all of your know-how in this space, you help us figure out how we can move the needle and close racial economic gaps in our society.
Well, one of those big gaps is access to capital. It remains one of the most important factors limiting establishment, expansion, and growth for women and minority-owned businesses. What are some of the challenges that that MBEs face when they're trying to get their businesses business loans?
Well, we've long known, those of us in this space, that access to capital, one, that's the lifeline for being able to launch and to thrive and sustain a business. And it's been very, very limited for minority business enterprises, for women-owned businesses, and nowhere was this more evident than in the midst of the pandemic, with the federal government stepping in for support, and in round one of the support to these businesses, many minority businesses were left out in the cold, right? It just highlighted an issue that we're well aware of. And that remains an issue. Round two was better targeted. And, I and a host of others, weighed in with the federal government on kind of changes to how that capital is deployed. So I think the intentionality is important. In the pandemic, in federal response, prime example, I don't think there was any intention to actually deny capital to minority-owned businesses. I just think there was no affirmative, positive intention to make sure that minority-owned businesses had access. And so we have to be very intentional about that effort. And so that is just generally from a policy perspective. Two, from those of us who sit in seats with opportunities to deploy capital to bring that to bear and to, and it doesn't have to be a set aside. It does have to be an intentional top of mind effort, knowing what we know about the history and what has repeatedly happened. And so corporate call to action, that work, we are seeing significantly more capital from our partners in this coalition deployed to minority, whether it's suppliers or in one case, just investments in investment firms to say, we want to make a significant number of investments in minority-owned investment firms, right? Because that's part of what they do. But the CEO having that intention to do it. And so that's what I think is the key, just policy leaders and allocators, with their hands on the money, actually doing it.
What words of encouragement would you then have for MBEs who are embarking on the hunt for capital? Are there any big things they should be thinking about?
Well, I think, and just having, I spent a lot of time in this space, so we're going to have an honest conversation about this. The first thing I say, my conversations are different when I'm talking to minority businesses than when I'm talking to policy leaders and different folks, because we all contribute to either the success or the failure. And one is be ready, get your house in order, have because there are organizations like you there to help businesses kind of be ready for those opportunities. So whether it's as simple as books, right? Because oftentimes businesses start as very small operations and the level of accounting standards and the record keeping. But that is kind of foundational, because when you get ready for real opportunities, if that's not in order, you're gonna be left out. And so that's critically important in terms of being ready for those moments. Two, really seeking out like the information on the opportunities. There have been different opportunities historically, but right now we are in a time, quite frankly, where there's a lot more focus and interest on this, a lot more awareness of the disparities. We ought to take advantage. We ought to take advantage of that as minority business community, and to seek every opportunity that's appropriate in terms of skill sets, services provided, and to utilize the resources that are available to become aware. Thirdly, some of this stuff takes time.
Right.
I've talked to many business owners with a high degree of frustration at the amount of time, at the amount of paperwork, but getting up and running, particularly if you have less of a track record, it's going to take more time to get through that. I would say persevere, and kind of go through the hoops. Don't get frustrated. Keep knocking on those doors, and eventually they'll open.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. I'll give it back to Peter Hurst.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
So thank you to Treasurer Wooden, and thank you to Donna for a very insightful conversation. Now, access to capital is very important. Access to intellectual capital, advice, assistance, subject matter training is very important. But there's nothing that beats actual contracts. So I'd like to welcome Mark Lev, who's the president of Fenway Sports Management. Mark is going to be the moderator for a panel on how to do business with sports organizations. We have representatives from the Red Sox, the Celtics, the Boston Athletic Association, and the Bruins. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'd like to welcome up Mark and his panel.
Hey, Nicole, can you hear us okay? We can't hear Nicole, though.
Can you hear me?
Oh, there you go. Yep, we can now. Awesome.
Great.
Thank you. Excellent. Well, good morning, everybody. It's nice to see you here at Fenway Park. My name's Mark Levin, and I'm the president of Fenway Sports Management. We are part of the family of companies that are owned by Fenway Sports Group. Our sister companies are Liverpool Football Club, the Red Sox, Roush Fenway Racing, New England Sports Network, and our real estate company. And you can, if you happen to be driving around the neighborhood, you could probably see some of the work of our real estate company with the music venue that we're building back behind the bleachers. But really, really excited to be here today with you. I also serve on one of the 10 subcommittees that were created as part of the social justice efforts here in Boston with what we call Fenway Sports Group Boston, which are the Red Sox, our real estate company, and Fenway Sports Management. We had over 130 volunteers, volunteer employees working on these committees to help advance our efforts around social justice, equity, and inclusion. And the committee that I'm on is really focused on identifying opportunities to work with minority business enterprises, ways in which we can engage with those companies in a greater way. So we thought it would be appropriate, since we're here at Fenway, to have a conversation about how to do business with sports organizations. And I'm really excited to be joined by three great individuals that are here with us today. Tim Zub, my colleague from the Red Sox, I'll let each of them talk a little bit about what they do. Fred Bunker from the Bruins and the TD Garden. Tom Grilk from the Boston Athletic Association, and Nicole Federico, who's with us via Zoom from the Boston Celtics. So why don't I just go down the line, Tim, maybe you can give a quick introduction about yourself.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm Tim Zhu, the Chief Financial Officer of the Boston Red Sox. Been with the club since 2003, so it's been a long journey and a fun one. And just thrilled to be here to take part in this conversation. Hopefully, meet a lot of folks during the lunch or the networking afterwards, and just really thrilled to be here.
Hey everybody, I'm Fred Bunker. Thank you to the council and the Red Sox for having us here today. I'm new to my job. I just joined here in May, so I'm kind of the new guy on the block, but really excited to be a part of this really exciting conversation, an important conversation.
Thank you, Fred. I'm Tom Grilk from the Boston Athletic Association, Boston Marathon. We don't have a family of companies or real estate or anything. I am, like Treasurer Wooden and some others, a recovering lawyer. We seem to have quite a few around here. For me, the firm of Wilmer Hale here in Boston. But I've been in the role of President and CEO of the Boston Athletic Association for about a decade, having been the outside board chair before that. And we feel a great sense of obligation to the entire community around here that has supported us tremendously through some very good times and some very horrible times. And we have a job ahead of us to be much more inclusive, and as Treasurer Wooden put it, to be intentional in this area. So I'm here to learn as much as I am to tell anybody anything.
Great. Tommy, congratulations on the staging of the marathon, bringing it back. That's great. Nicole?
Yep. Hi, all. I'm Nicole Federico, as Mark said. I'm from the Boston Celtics, and I'm terribly sorry that I'm not able to be there in person this morning. Something came up unexpected today that I couldn't get around, unfortunately, but still happy to be here via Zoom. I've been with the Celtics since 2003. I was most recently in our corporate partnerships department, and then about a month ago was transitioned into our SVP of marketing and content role. I'm also heavily involved in our social justice initiative called Celtics United, which I believe I'll talk a little bit about later. So really excited to be part of the conversation. And thanks for having me.
Well, Nicole, why don't we stay with you? And I know the program that the Celtics announced back in 2020 is really a model in the NBA. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that program?
Yeah, would love to. So back in September 2020, the Celtics investor group, players, staff, pretty much everyone across the board kind of got together and came up with this really great brainchild to start a program that would basically address racial injustice and social inequities in the Boston area. So two of my colleagues, Dave Hoffman, who runs our community engagement group in our foundation, as well as Allison Feaster, who was our head of player development, were kind of the leaders of the whole pack, along with one of our primary investors, Steve Paliuka. So like I said, it launched in September 2020. It's called Celtics United for Social Justice. And our big focus is helping to combat issues that have negatively impacted the Black community in Greater Boston. So the initiative is comprised of 6 pillars. I have them here just so I don't forget any. We've got equity in education, economic empowerment and opportunity, equity in healthcare, criminal justice and law enforcement, breaking down barriers and building bridges, and voting and civic engagement. So I think the one that will probably make the most sense for me to talk a little bit about is the one that I'm lucky enough to be a co-leader of, which is the economic empowerment and opportunity pillar. So our focus in that group is to empower and create opportunities for Black and Brown-owned businesses in the Greater Boston area. And that's actually where one of our largest programs to date stems from. So I can get into that in a little bit. But overall, it's been an incredible experience being part of the whole Celtics United for Justice initiative. And there's a lot more information available for kind of all those pillars I mentioned at celtics.com/united. So Mark, I can go into the other program now if you want, or I'll leave it up to you.
So why don't you keep going? You're on a roll.
Awesome. So just about a year ago, we partnered up with Vistaprint, who is a local company. They're actually the team's jersey patch partner. So I'm sure when you're all watching Celtics games a million times a year like me, you see the Vistaprint logo on our jerseys. One of the main kind of components of our partnership with them is their like-mindedness and wanting to make an impact for Black and Brown-owned minority businesses in the New England area. So in partnership with them and the NAACP, we launched a program that we've named the Power Forward Small Business Grant Program. So the aim for that program is to have an impact by empowering small Black or Brown-owned businesses throughout New England. The commitment is to distribute 40 $25,000 grants for a total of $1 million. To be eligible to receive a grant, businesses have to be Black-owned, 51%, need to be located in New England, and need to employ less than 25 employees. So to date, there's been a tremendous success with this program. We've received over 800 applications. The National NAACP receives those applications. They're kind of the first kind of filter going through everything, making sure all of the proper criteria are met. Once they've kind of whittled the list of applications down to a manageable amount, there is a group of us between the local NAACP chapter, Vistaprint, and the Celtics who then vote on the applications using a really kind of high-tech scoring rubric that we developed in conjunction with the NAACP. So we actually awarded the first set of grants a few months ago. We awarded 12 to a whole host of businesses that kind of run the gamut, products and services wise. I think we had a healthcare company, childcare, food service, employment service. We make it a really fun announcement. We've had our mascot involved. We've had Brad Stevens involved when we're actually going to call, and we've had to do it over Zoom, obviously. So we've had the opportunity to kind of let the folks know in real time that they're receiving a grant, and it has been one of the most moving experiences I've ever been a part of. So people are using those funds to do all sorts of things, to raise capital, to bring on more employees, to increase their marketing efforts, or kind of across the board. Once businesses receive the grant, in addition to that, we supply them with kind of like a custom media kit that has branded graphics in it that they can then use on their own social media channels and websites and everything. And then beyond the grant support will consist of more custom business solutions that Vistaprint is able to provide, like logo or graphic design, marketing and e-commerce help and support, packaging and labels. So the support doesn't end right when the grant is delivered. It kind of is an ongoing relationship between the Celtics, Vistaprint, NAACP, and respective businesses. So we're going to plan to kind of keep in touch with all of them throughout the process to see how the funds kind of improve and enhance their growth. So we're actually going to be awarding the next set of grants, I believe, in mid-December. So we're in the process of vetting and reviewing and voting right now. But for more information on that program, please visit celtics.com/powerforward. It's a really great program, and we certainly want to get the word out to as many local entrepreneurs and business owners as possible.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Mark.
Thanks, Nicole. Tim, maybe you can talk a little bit about some of Major League Baseball's initiatives in this space and some of the things that are happening at Fenway Sports Group as well.
Yeah, I think Major League Baseball is committed to this work as well, and I think it starts number one with sort of accountability. And what I mean by that is, for many years now, the league has required all 30 MLB teams to track and submit their data regarding spending with minority and women-owned businesses, and then they share that information with all the teams, and that sort of ensures that the teams know where they stand in this area, from a data perspective, and then also know the trends in terms of, obviously the goal is to increase those spends. So they've been doing that for a long time. Every year the teams submit their data, and that's an ongoing process. They also have a supplier diversity summit that they host every year, which is a similar sort of matchmaking concept where all 30 teams send representatives. They've actually recently paired it with the winter meetings, and then they invite supplier diversity, diverse suppliers to potentially talk to businesses similar to this type of event, but it's more of a, so they're very constantly focused on ensuring that we increase our spend with minority-owned businesses across the entire league. The third thing is they recently hired a new Chief People and Culture Officer, Michelle Myers-Shipp, who's very focused on sort of diversity inclusion across the entire league. So those are just some of the things the league's doing. The Red Sox, I think we've been focused on this area for a while. We've been part of the Pace Setters Initiative in partnership with the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce since the beginning, with a lot of other companies. And I'm happy, Mark, when we get into the further discussion, to share some stories about some of the matchmaking we've done. But it's definitely an area where we hold ourselves accountable. We want to do more in this area. Obviously, the business has to fit the needs that we have, and we'll get into that a little later. But we've made some great connections. We've made some new partnerships that we're excited about.
Great. Fred, you want to talk a little bit about some of the things that are happening with the Bruins and at the Garden?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the Garden side, we are really excited with the work that we've done with our partner, Boston Properties. In September, we launched Hub Hall, a food concept right at the Hub on Causeway, where we have partnered with a lot of New England-based vendors. And we're very excited to say that our two of our most successful vendor partners so far have been minority restaurants in that space. Additionally, on the Bruins side, in September, we just launched a 9-month internship program for diversity inclusion, where we're trying to provide professional pathways, both with us or within the league, to help provide a platform for folks to enter the game of hockey.
Great. Thank you. Okay, yeah, I guess we're going to be getting some questions along the way. Tom, obviously putting the marathon on is a monumental undertaking, and I'm sure costs a lot of money too. Maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the goods and services that you purchase as part of staging the marathon or the half marathon or any of your other events.
Mark, I'll do that. First, I'll just I want to, if anything, confess, compared to what I've heard from everybody else, we are more or less nowhere when it comes to a programmatic approach to dealing with minority, women-owned businesses. We have a couple of strong relationships with significant financial amounts involved with women-owned enterprises, but there's not a program. For us, we are very much heads down, a small group of about 30 people, on putting on a few large events, principally the marathon. And if we get it wrong at all, then there's nothing. And we should have had our heads up more than we have. Over the course of the pandemic, when peer organizations, 2 hours, other large marathons around the world were cutting staff half and more, cutting compensation half, we kept everybody at full salary so that we could turn to the development of a community engagement program, focused not so much on suppliers at this point, but on engaging with the neighborhoods, the communities that we serve in a much more intentional way. And with that, during Boston Marathon weekend this year, we announced the beginnings of the public element of that with grants on the occasion of the 125th Boston Marathon, $125,000 to groups across Boston. But with that, the journey begins in this area. So what do we do in response to your question? Products, services, that sort of thing. If I go kind of down the marathon course or through the course of the weekend, first off, we have the large expo where people go to pick up their numbers, to buy things. That we do in conjunction with a women-owned enterprise and have for a very long time. It's been a very successful relationship. If you then run down the course on Boston Marathon Day, the kind of services that we get from people, because we are largely outsourced when it comes to putting on a large event, because you can't have 9,000 people working all year round just for one event. Event services for putting on races, timing services for keeping track of people, electronics of all kinds, whether it's putting together an app for the event or dealing with the visual displays that we do along the way. There is a need for, at the biggest dollar level, infrastructure services, putting up and maintaining all the things that are used for a marathon, whether they are large structures at the finish, whether they are barriers along the way, the delivery of products and services out onto the race course. So there's a rich array of things that we do that we outsource. We've been doing this for a while, so we've dealt with the same suppliers for quite a while. And when you're doing something that can be as fragile as a large event that takes place at some level over more than 50 miles of roadway, two sides of the street, when you're working successfully with someone, you're kind of loath to make changes. So it has kept us with our heads more down than they should be in this area. So as we look to community engagement, it will increase in breadth to address greater opportunities for dealing with all vendors, including the types that all of you represent. We will need to be intentional about it, and I hope to learn more about doing that. But we do have that commitment, just as we have to working with the communities that we seek to serve.
Great. Thank you, Tom. And just you all have index cards on your seats, so feel free if you have a question to fill that out, write it on the index card. And for those that are participating virtually, you can send them through the chat, and we will get them. We'll save a little bit of time at the end. Nicole, can you talk a little bit about some of the products and services that the Celtics, where you guys are spending money in connection with the business?
Yeah, so I think similarly we're putting on, we consider ourselves to be a live events business where we're putting on 41 or 43, hopefully more, including playoffs events year round in the Garden, and then there's other events on top of that. So I would say for the most part we're really heavy in the promotional products business, signage, banners, things like that. We also have a lot of fan and season ticket member giveaways that we're often looking to source. T-shirts, rally towels, bobbleheads, kind of, all of the different types of gifts that kind of people are associate with receiving from a sports team. A lot of equipment needs as far as audiovisual equipment, camera equipment. We place a pretty good amount of fairly large orders in those kind of realms every year. But I would say even more of the area that we're looking to expand further into is service-wise, as far as creative goes. So we are kind of constantly looking for minority photographers, minority video content editors and producers. So as everyone I'm here sure knows, like content is such a big driver for pretty much every part of our business now. And in our minds, the more diversity we can have in how we're capturing and editing and distributing that content, the better. So I would say right now, I kind of look at that as something that's really gonna look to grow for us. Something else that we've really tried to do is a lot of the businesses that we're getting the applications for through the Power Forward grant program, we're basically aggregating all those businesses into kind of one area and making them easily digestible for our players and our team personnel to kind of get to know and understand. So just helping, those businesses in particular kind of get a little bit more awareness from the player side, and just getting our players more acclimated with the places, the products and services that are available to them in the Boston area. So I'd say biggest opportunity for us upcoming is definitely looking more in that service area as far as creative services go, for sure.
Great. Thanks, Nicole. Fred, Tim, maybe you guys can comment on that.
Yeah, sure. It's I would say very similar list for us, but I would the way sometimes we think about our supplier relationships are kind of in three different buckets. You have a bucket that is very specialized and there's almost no flexibility to do anything different. For example, we buy a lot of baseballs. We buy baseballs from Rawlings. We're not allowed to buy any baseballs from anybody else. So we sort of have some categories that are just that sort of, that's the good example where there's no flexibility to do anything different other than the official baseball of Major League Baseball, which is Rawlings. The second category is, oftentimes we have spends with sponsors, so we have one thing that in sports is you can look out, I can see the sign, Bank of America is our official bank, and so, we do all of our banking with Bank of America. That's a common thing that happens in sports. And so, for financial services and a few other categories, we do that. The third bucket is where we have the most flexibility. And so that's where we're really trying to drive, a lot of minority spend wherever possible. What's in that bucket? Well, there's things like, goods and services, office supplies, cleaning supplies, things that help us with the field maintenance, things like that. There's similar to what Nicole said on the promotional side, we giveaways for season ticket holders, printing, signage, fan giveaways, promotional items, and that's sort of another bucket where we have a lot of flexibility. And then on the services side, we're constantly looking for partners on the services side, whether it's in technology, IT, cybersecurity, creative, marketing, and those types of things. I think there's flexibility there. Food services is another category that I wanted to call out. One thing we did over the last year is we would do these employee lunches, maybe once every couple months, maybe not so much when the offices were closed, but as now the people are coming back to the offices. And historically, we might, just cater the lunch to a company like Qdoba or something like that. Nothing against Qdoba, but we sort of said, wait a minute, why don't we take advantage of these opportunities to partner with local minority-owned businesses to bring in a different food service to give our employees. So I think I saw Kara Buckley in the back. Kara was helping me out. We brought in a sandwich shop called Papi Vivi, which was a Cuban sandwich shop in Lowell, and we brought in a lunch. We had a breakfast with a company called Corny Bread, which was so if you have a food service and you can cater a lunch for up to 200 people, make sure you talk to me or Kara. That's an area that we sort of committed that we're gonna make sure we do minority-owned local businesses for those types of opportunities. The contracts are obviously relatively small, but we want to hopefully develop more relationships in the food services area as well. That's probably the last one I would talk about.
Yeah, I think for us as well, everything that Nicole and Tim said are all very similar. I think the only thing I would add is development and construction. So that's been a space for us as we've been working through the expansion of the TD Garden. Trying to integrate local partners into that space and local trades is another opportunity for us.
Great, thank you. I guess this question is for all of you. Maybe, Tom, why don't I start with you? But I know you mentioned that you have a lot of companies that you've worked with for some time, but what are the most important qualifications that you look for in a supplier as you're contemplating making a decision on who you're going to work with?
In simplest terms, it is excellence. As I said, we are largely outsourced when it comes to putting on events. And so if the service, and it's principally services that we receive, aren't superb, then the whole event is at risk. For ourselves, we look for now 4 things among our staff, and by extension with people who are suppliers: collaboration, innovation, discipline, inclusion. And if we see all of those things at a high level, then we are very pleased to work with somebody. And in particular, things like innovation and discipline from others help us to be a whole lot better at what we are. If we start to think we're doing something well, and we work with someone else who is more clever, more innovative, who thinks more broadly, does so in a disciplined way, with collaboration that helps us, then we're ever so much better. So the things we look for in ourselves, we are very gratified to find in greater degree among others.
Great. Nicole?
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of what Tom said. I think excellence probably broadly covers it enough, but I think for us, agility, reliability are big. Just the ability to turn things around quickly. As much as we like to say that we're able to get all of our finance and budget approvals done, months in advance, we're often working at a really, really quick speed to be able to get things done in the time frames that we need them. We've literally had to order like 20,000 t-shirt giveaways within 48 hours of the date that we're going to actually give them away. So, we've got a lot of partners in those spaces that we know we can rely on. But that's kind of an ever-changing world. So I think those are probably the biggest qualities that we look for.
Fred?
Yeah, I'd echo both of what they were saying. But additionally, I think I'd be remiss as a finance person not to say value. I think value is an important part of the goods that we receive. And additionally, we really value long-term partnerships. We want to be in these for a long journey with all of you and try to help an impact on your bottom line.
Fred stole my answer about the word partnerships. I think that word sometimes gets thrown around, but I think it's important that, you know, we do in all of our relationships, whether it's with sponsors, whether it's with season ticket holders, whether it's with our fans, and certainly our suppliers, look to develop partnerships. And what does that mean? You know, it means we don't want it to feel transactional in nature. Yes, there's a good or a service being exchanged for a fee, and that's of course the crux of it. But, you know, what else can we do to help? You know, what can we support our partners by and inviting them to Fenway and hosting them or their clients here? Can we use our network to sort of do more than just that transactional sort of nature of the business? So I think that partnership word is I think an important thing. We look to build those same long-term partnerships when we can.
If I may add one other thing, we at the BA very much value long-term relationships with people. There's great value in it. I look out, I see a sign for John Hancock, our principal sponsor for 36 years. I see Samuel Adams out there with whom we worked for a period of time. But as I think through this area, and as I thought about coming here today, at times, long-term relationships can somewhat be the enemy of looking more broadly for what the opportunities are that are around you. So one of the things that I will be wrestling with, I'm sure, is where do we open things up where we've worked with people for a while in order to have a more diverse group of suppliers and to achieve some of the benefits we heard about at the beginning today of having minority enterprises involved. They help to bring and breed economic success. It's a challenge I think about.
Fred?
Mark, could I actually add one quick thing to what Tom just mentioned? So I think the long-term partnership thing is very key, and we've actually found that through our partnership with Vistaprint, we obviously we have to do a certain amount of business with them as far as, you know, ordering promotional products and different types of products that they themselves can provide. But it's also opened us up to work with them to identify where some of those minority-owned businesses are. So we can say to them, if we have an order that we're going to need for an event in particular, we can work with them to say, like, we would love to kind of work with you to kind of funnel this order to one of those minority-owned businesses. And they have kind of that database and understanding of what businesses are available in those particular spaces.
Fred, this is for you and Tim, but could you guys maybe both share a purchasing success story with a minority business enterprise?
Oh, sure. Yeah, you know, one that I think of, which was very fond, was a company called Windwalker, and the founder Herbie Duvain, who I met a few years ago. But I think the reason that I enjoyed the relationship was we met at a Pacesetters event, you know, just sort of networking. He followed up via email. He said, let's just have lunch. We just had a sort of casual lunch and just both listened to each other. It was just, hey, I want to learn about your business. Tell me about yours. There was not a lot. There was no sort of pressure or, hey, let's get to the deal. Let's sort of figure out what we're going to do here. There was a sort of patience of, like, I really want to understand. And we talked about, you know, his company provides security services. He also provide training services. We sort of explored the security service thing. That wasn't going to work out. We pivoted to sort of this online training module that his company did for our staff. But I think what struck me from the relationship was that sort of like, let's try to figure each other out. Let's not race to the end conclusion that let's this contract of this amount of money, but it was more like we really want to understand. So that was it was a relatively small contract that we did with Herbie, but I think the journey of really spending the time to over multiple meetings to get to the place of the contract, and then when I talked about that partnership, you know, that was an example where, you know, he did invite some clients to an event at a game. We hosted them in the suite. He was able to do more business from that, so it sort of grew a little bit from there. So I think that one, in terms of the sort of path that it took and not racing to the end, is the message that I think that one sticks out for me.
Yeah, as I referenced, I'm the new guy. So my track record here in Boston is still being built. I think the one that I referenced earlier related to our business in the Hub Hall, where we've been able to develop really strong partnerships in two of our vendors, one a pizza and the other one Juicy Greens, where they are two of our top performers, and we've helped provide them a platform to have high foot traffic areas and just visibility in places that they didn't have before.
That's great. Tim, I just want to echo what you said. One of the things that we've been working on with Peter and Donna and the team from the council is creating networking opportunities and bringing some minority-owned businesses to interact with the people in our organization that are buyers, that are spending money on promotional products or whatever the case might be. And we intend as a part of our partnership to continue with that into the future. So I think that's I'm in sales, I sell sponsorships, and we try to go in and learn as much as we can about the company that we're looking to do business with, and I think that's a great approach to take, and so that when you do present a bid, it's addresses the specific needs. I guess this is for Tom and Fred and Tim. What advice would you offer to vendors to participate in a bid or to make a pitch to your organization?
At this point, I would invite people to be aggressive because we don't have the network that we should. We will in relatively short order put together a way for people to be in contact with us. If one looks at our website or looks at what happens in an event of the type that we put on, there are lots of services that we acquire. I'm embarrassed to say we don't know who you are in many cases, but I'd be very pleased to hear about it and to put together a more programmatic approach to learning those things. I reckon that's it.
Obviously, beyond competency, is there something unique or a new set of way of looking at things that you can bring to the table? For us, a prime example is next year we're going to be going back out to tender for security. Our security contract's expiring. Are there new thoughts in that space? Are there ideas that we just haven't contemplated to do differently, to do better? I think bring something unique.
Yeah, I would echo that, and I would just echo what I said before about building relationships and not sort of. I agree with the aggressiveness in the sense that we have to hear from you, we have to know, but we want to also balance that with sort of like a little bit of patience as well too, because sometimes these relationships do take time to form, and so I think there's a balance there. They're both important, but I think looking to develop those relationships, looking to get to know each other, all the things I've already said are what I think rises, but also the innovation and creativity for sure. I mean, there's so much going out there in the world, and it's impossible for people like us to sort of keep track of it. And so if there are new and different ways to do services that we've been doing a certain way for a while, we want to hear about that for sure.
Do you have something else, Tom?
If I could add one more thing
Sure.
to pick up on what Tim said, the business about coming up with new ways of doing things, being creative, being innovative, particularly in the world of sport, everything is changing. For us, people run down the same road every year. But apart from that, there's lots of room to think. Angela Ruggiero, probably America's greatest Olympic hockey player, runs an organization called the Sports Innovation Lab here in Boston. And people who come through there are relentlessly creative in the things that they come up with and just leave me feeling stupid as I sit there and listen. So be aggressive and boy, be innovative and creative in looking beyond the ways that some of us have done this for a long time, would continue to do it, but for the way that you can help us.
Great. I wanted to leave enough time. I don't know if anybody has any questions. Were there any that were coming in? I'm not sure who to look for to see. Oh, here we go. Great, thank you. How can diverse minority medical suppliers, PPE, gloves, orthopedic goods, et cetera, do business with Boston sports organizations?
I mean, just for starters, if you're in the audience, come talk to me after this or at the networking. We obviously purchased a lot of those types of materials over the last couple of years. I think we will be purchasing less of them moving forward, hopefully, but we will still be in the market for them for sure. So I think, would love to hear from whoever posed that question. Would love to say hi after this event.
Yeah, similarly, feel free to come to me, reach out to me versus via LinkedIn. Any way, I think there's plenty of inroads on that front. Additionally, via our enterprise, we do welcome inbound inquiries via DelawareNorth.com, and feel free to submit at any time.
And very interesting here, we have 31,500 people coming down the road, a couple of thousand of which every year wind up in a medical tent, and we have to do things for them, and we use medical supplies. So very, very open to that conversation.
Nicole?
Yeah, sure. Similar to Tim, I know we have ordered a lot of that stuff in the past. I would imagine that those needs will probably decrease a bit, but they're certainly not going to go away. So would be happy to kind of connect with whomever posed that question and get them connected with our operations team who manages that part of our business for sure.
The next question that came in, any specific guidance for IT companies, IT service providers? Tim, you oversee IT.
Yeah,
so
yeah. I
probably-
mean, you know, we're constantly trying to stay, you know, sort of up to speed on the latest technologies. I do think that cybersecurity is a topic that keeps us all up, meaning myself and my team up at night. And that doesn't mean it's the only service that we would be looking for, but we're constantly trying to understand how we can protect ourselves against the next cyber attack. And so if you do have a company that can offer services in cyber, that's certainly right in the wheelhouse of things that we're trying to be better at. But at the same time, you know, other technology, we use technology in so many other ways as well. So, and that I am also the person, that, as Mark said, oversees technology for the Red Sox. So certainly would love to talk to anybody that offers services in that area that might be here. Or if you're in the virtual audience, feel free to you know, reach out to me as well.
Yeah, and for us, we use a lot of information technology and related services on an app that we use, which has come from AT&T, from Tata Consultancy Services. We're always looking for better ways to use information. We deal with a couple of firms there. Either we could communicate directly, or we could perhaps even more productively put somebody here in touch with the people that provide that for kind of niche services to help in a particular area.
Great. Let's see. Beyond procurement, are there other creative services outsourced for live events? How can you apply when you have those in-house services already as part of your organization?
Mark, I can start on this one.
Great.
We do have some of those services internal that we obviously, you know, utilize whenever we can, but I would say across the board, whenever we're holding events, and I don't necessarily mean games, but other events, like, you know, we've got 2 large fundraising events throughout the course of the season where there is a lot of needs for AV equipment and all of that type of stuff that is totally not within my wheelhouse. But there definitely, those needs do exist. I would say if you do have a company or service that you would be interested in kind of getting in front of us, let's get in touch. And I can get you in touch directly with our head of events. She is always looking for new vendors, new companies, and new partners to work with in this space, because as I think I said earlier, we feel like it's ever changing. So if there are options out there, we would certainly love to connect, and I'm happy to do that.
Great. I would agree on the Bruin side as well. I think we're always in need of additional creative services beyond the in-house that we have. So feel free to connect.
Great. Well, we got one coming in virtually. I think we'll do this one and then. Do you outsource professional development and learning for staff, leadership, communications, DEI, et cetera?
Yeah, we've definitely done at sort of all different levels of the food chain. So we've done outsourced training at the management level, where we had a management retreat and we had a facilitator group that came in and helped at that side. We have training for our day of game sort of ushers, ticket takers, you know, part-time staff, where we do an annual training and we often bring in external resources. We do sales trainings for our salespeople, so we've brought in, and we've done customer service training as well for our service people. So we definitely have leveraged outside training and professional development resources, and happy to explore that as well. That's definitely something that we do, again, at all levels of the sort of spectrum of our employee base.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Tim hit on all the same areas that we're in that same space.
We don't have all those areas. But we do have, for example, external facilitators once in a while for group meetings of one kind or another, or to help us explore new areas. So, and anyone in the field of helping with learning, I'm very interested to know better.
Great. Nicole, did you have anything you wanted to add here?
Sure. We are actually going to be bringing in a head of people and culture position. I think he's starting in the next couple weeks. So he's actually coming and joining the Celtics from Apple. So that is going to be something as far as professional development training, management training, and stuff like that. That's going to be kind of a growing area for us. So I'm sure that he's going to be looking for folks to connect with in the Boston area about that. So again, another area where I would be happy to put whomever in touch with the right folks.
Great. Thank you, Nicole. I think we're running up against time, so I want to thank Tim, Fred, Tom, and Nicole for taking time from their morning to join us today. Hopefully you all found it helpful and learned a little bit, and please do take the time to say hello before they head back to their respective offices. Great. Thank you. Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you.
So let's have another round of applause to that great panel. So I want to thank Mark and Tim, Nicole, Tom, and Fred. It was a very informative panel. The sports business is a very important part of the national economy. It's a very important part of the local economy. So we appreciate these folks sharing information on how to do business with their respective organizations. Treasurer Wooden, in his conversation with Donna, talked about an issue that's very, very important for minority businesses, and that's access to capital. That is a supreme challenge for minority-owned businesses. I can tell you from my time as an entrepreneur that access to capital is as important as getting access to contracts. So our next panel is going to focus on this issue, and the moderator is our own Michael Granger, who is the project director for the Minority Business Development Agency Business Center. That is part of the Greater New England Council. It's funded by a 5-year, $2 million grant from the Minority Business Development Agency, which is the only federal agency that's focused on minority business development. And we're pleased that Michael Granger is going to moderate this panel. Michael, in addition to being an entrepreneur, is a venture capitalist by training and by experience. He ran a couple of venture capital units in corporate America, and more importantly, he actually started a venture capital fund that was focused on providing venture capital to minority-owned companies. So I'm going to bring Michael and his panel up, and Michael, I'm sure you're going to introduce your panel. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Michael Granger.
Good morning. My name is Michael Granger. I'm the director of the MBDA Business Center in Boston. And welcome to the Capital Access Forum, or Access to Capital Conversation. In chemistry, there's a term called limiting reagent. It is the input that determines how much of a compound can be made. So for aspirin, it's salicylic acid is the limiting reagent. It determines how much aspirin you can make. In business, capital is the limiting reagent that determines how big you can grow. And for MBEs, capital is the limiting reagent. There are many initiatives underway to solve this problem. The panel today will address what it takes for MBEs to access capital at 3 levels of the capital stack: senior debt, subordinated debt, and equity. The panel will introduce themselves, and then they will talk about their initiatives and their companies after that.
I can't remember which order we say we're going to go.
Yes, yes.
But I'll start. Good morning. My name is Justin Dawkins. I am one of 3 managing partners for an investment firm based in Atlanta called Collab Capital. My co-founders, Barry Gibbons and Joel Burke Solomon, we actually started our ventures around the same time in 2012, 2013 in the tech space. I worked on a social listening platform. Jewel worked on a image recognition software that was later acquired by Amazon, and Barry worked on a automated bartending machine that was actually ahead of its time in a lot of ways. He ended up licensing his technology and exiting that business around the same time I did. So one of the things that we decided to do was, as we came together, we started to notice a certain trend happening in the Atlanta ecosystem and beyond, which was the access to capital was the next biggest challenge, and that we wanted to solve it together. So keeping our entrepreneurial hats on, but then moving over into the venture side, we decided to build a new capital product, which we can talk about in a little bit, to help first of all get adequate access to adequate capital to Black businesses that need it and innovators, and then also we felt like it was time for the capital markets to innovate at the speed of the internet. And so we built a new capital product and solution that I'll share in just a moment, all in hopes of bridging and filling in the racial wealth gap here in this country. So thank you.
Thank you for that. My name is Ron Molina Brantley, Vice President at Berkshire Bank. I've been with Berkshire Bank for the last few years. But before that, I worked with small businesses and entrepreneurs through a technical assistant provider called Valley Venture Ventures here in Springfield, Mass. And before that, I spent my professional career in finance, municipal finance, and banking. So I'm really excited to be here today to talk about access to quality capital, because it's really important that we actually work with our minority communities, our underrepresented communities, and not be afraid to say that we're working with them, especially when it comes to high quality access to capital. I'm a father of two boys, a 6 and a 5-year-old, so they keep me on my toes quite often. So I'm looking forward to having a frank, open conversation about how I can help and how can financial institutions such as Berkshire Bank be a leading provider in helping minority businesses survive.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Larry Andrews. I'm president of Mass Growth Capital. Mass Growth Capital is a quasi-state agency that is really the small business arm of the state. We were instrumental in getting over $750 million in grants to businesses as COVID relief, and over 4,500 of those went to minority and women-owned businesses. And again, that was working with partners throughout the state to make sure that those that were impacted by COVID made sure that they actually received money. It's an unprecedented time because of COVID. There's lots of things that are coming as far as federal funding, as far as state funding, and it's something that we can speak about as we move forward. It's a real pleasure to be here again.
Thank you to this distinguished panel. Justin Dawkins, could you tell us a bit about Collab Ventures and what its investment thesis is and how you go about running it?
Absolutely. Who doesn't like talking about things that they create? So when Jewel, Barry, and I came together, we decided, or we noticed that not only was there this massive gap in access to capital and wealth creation tools, but also that the capital markets hadn't evolved much. For most Black businesses, when they're raising money, they're told to do one thing first, and they say, either get a line of credit on their home, which we can all argue about prices and values of homes in another conversation, or go to friends and family. But the problem with the friends and family approach is, I don't know about you, but where I grew up, my friends and family had about as much money as I did. So there wasn't a great place to get more money because there wasn't much to get. And so we said, so then you're told as a Black entrepreneur and innovator to then go to a bank. And banks need history. They need to know that you're creditworthy, you have assets or things that can be collateralized. And again, if you don't have those things, like a home, which I don't hope no one's putting their home on the line like that, what do you do? And then if you are doing something that's of high innovation or deeply technical, you might pursue venture capital, but the problem is twofold. One is networks. Do you have access to someone who can understand the problem that you're trying to solve? And then two, which is actually much more material, is are you big enough for the venture capital product or instrument? And the truth of the matter is, in the earliest stages of most high innovation businesses, we don't know. That's kind of the risk, if you will, of venture. And so we said, you know what, let's not only provide a capital solution by raising a $52 million fund, but let's also look at producing a new financial instrument that gives optionality to founders. And so what we do is we actually built a new agreement. It's called a SPACE agreement, which is a shared profit and collaborative endorsement agreement. It's just a fancy way of saying we're going to give you an option or a choice that as you learn more about the business, if venture turns out to be the right capital solution, we will help you go and raise more money, raise more capital, and continue on that path. That is the most ideal for many high-tech ventures or even just technology ventures in general. But if it turns out that the thing that you thought you could sell for $1,000 a seat or device, whatever, it turns out only $100, but can still be profitable, that business is a tenth of the size you thought it was going to be, but still profitable, we have an option for you to return value to your investors and keep those interests aligned via a profit share. And if you just decide that you want to maybe keep the business, maybe pass it down to your children or keep it within the family, the profit sharing agreement can be a tool as well. So we realize that there are far more calm businesses out there, or what we describe as calm businesses. But again, we don't know. We also don't believe that venture capitalists are inherently bad at their jobs. They're not just picking losers out here. They're actually picking, making investments based on the information that they have. It's just that what happens over time is you realize that the capital fit wasn't right. And so we wanted to course correct that. And also we realized that the vast majority, if you look at a relatively speaking, 50 company portfolio, basically about 5 companies produce over 80 to 85% of all the returns. And so what happens is misalignment between investor and entrepreneur basically says the investor is going to focus on the 4 to 5 companies that are going to perform the best and then kind of orphan or leave in what they call write down or write to zero. And so we can't afford for that to happen in our communities. And so we wanted to make sure we gave founders a tool and an option to maximize the potential of all their businesses, keep people employed, as we heard earlier today, and kind of fill in that racial wealth gap that we talked about earlier.
So now Ron Molina Brantley will tell us, from Berkshire Bank, is going to tell us more about what it takes to get capital from a bank and what Berkshire is doing to provide greater access to capital for MBEs.
Yes, thanks. Berkshire Bank is a 175-year-old socially responsible bank. We have 107 banks throughout New England and New York. And we have a wealth of financial products, personal and business banking products, as every other traditional financial institution does. But I'm proud to talk a little bit about is our Community Comeback, which is a $5 billion multi-year investment, which we're giving out investing and lending $2.5 billion into our low and moderate income neighborhoods, and $1.5 billion in the next few years in small businesses, primarily minority small businesses and small businesses in general. And we do that through an initiative called Revex Labs. Revex Labs is powered by Berkshire Bank and is an initiative that's been around for the last few years. And what we do is we help the underserved and underbanked community through financial wellness, access to high quality financial capital, as well as financial literacy and financial wellness programs. We partner with local organizations and nonprofits to make sure that small businesses have a full breadth of products and services around, to include wraparound services, because it's really important not just to give small businesses funds, but to really help them grow and become sustainable in the future as well. So it's really important. We do that through our most popular product, which is the Futures Funds line of credit, which is up to $50,000 line of credit for entrepreneurs and small businesses, particularly minority small businesses in underserved and underrepresented communities, including people of color, women, individuals with disabilities, and the LGBTQIA communities. And this product is primarily for individuals who cannot traditionally meet the criteria and underwriting criteria and credit criteria of a traditional bank lending products and services. So what we do is we work with entrepreneurs to see how we can help them. We partner with them with a community organization, community partner, such as the Mass BECMA, the Black Economic Development Council, or the Mass LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce, to really help them figure out how we can help and support the entrepreneur holistically. We work with them hand in very closely to make sure that they're succeeding, because the last thing we want to do is give someone funds that they don't have the full breadth of wraparound services to help them succeed long term. And so we're proud to work with that. And if anyone has any questions about our Future Fund line of credit or any other banking services or products that we have, please let me know. I look forward to really talking to you and to getting to know you, see how I can help you from a holistic standpoint. And we're a proud member of the Greater Chamber, New England Minority Supplier Diversity. And with that being said, we're really proud to announce that in the next coming months, we're going to launch a platform which you can help entrepreneurs, primarily minority entrepreneurs and businesses, to see how they can work with us through procurement and other services.
So Ron just told us about bank financing, which is at the senior debt level of the capital stack. Larry Andrews from Mass Growth Capital Corporation will tell us more about subordinated debt, which is at a different part of the capital stack from CoLab Capital, which is equity, and from Berkshire Bank, which is senior debt. And go ahead, Larry.
So before I get to subordinated debt, I'm going to give you a little bit of personal history. I don't know if everybody was watching the playoffs with the Dodgers, and I don't know if you saw Big Papi going absolutely crazy when they won, and it was really how I was feeling. And so as a kid, and this will date me a little bit, but in 1967, there was a group of ball players in this park that won the pennant, and it was similar. And they had no chance, and they all of a sudden won. And one of the players, in Little League, I always wanted to be the shortstop, but unfortunately I was pudgy, so I was always a catcher. But that was Rico Petrocelli was on my wall, and that was my hero. And part of that, it was a big deal in the 1967, and Man of La Mancha was on Broadway, and a song called "The Impossible Dream" was sort of the theme song for that year. And if you haven't listened to that song, Luther Vandross has an amazing rendition of that song. Now I'm going to go 30 years later, and I've told this story in this room, that I had a stroke. I had a massive stroke. And right side paralyzed, couldn't speak. I'm a man of faith. There's always a reason of why things happen. And at the time, I was out and I had the opportunity, there was a fundraiser, and I was with a bank at the time, and I was able to play on this field after about 2 months after I had my stroke. And at the time, it was just an amazing opportunity for sort of a revitalization of what really physically I had gone through. And again, it was just sort of this this place had a real special meaning to me. And I bring this forward because I believe that there's right now, given what COVID has happened in many communities, there is an unprecedented amount of money that will come not only federally but also from state to address some of the issues that have been plagued our society for really our history. And now's the time that is to get ready to take advantage of these funds as they start being become available. It's going to be different for different states, different for the way it will come out. But I'm going to give you two things. One is the SSBCI, which is the Small Business Credit Initiative, which is from the Treasury. Massachusetts will receive $134 million, and that will have a racial lens on it. And that will be for taking advantage of contracts and opportunities that minority businesses will have in the coming years. In addition, you've heard about opera funds, and those are coming, and those are trillions of dollars. And again, that has a racial lens on it. And again, that will help in fueling contracts in businesses and really looking at ways in which minority businesses can take the forefront. And I hate to even use minority at this point, because we know that's going to change very, very quickly. And so this is really an unprecedented time. You're talking about an impossible dream. We're living it now. This is the time to take advantage of money and opportunity in order to grow your business. Subordinated lending, one second. So on the capital stack, we're behind a bank. We work with banks in order to make deals happen. And so it tends to be a little bit more riskier. It tends to be a little bit more, but it's unsecured. And so basically we're putting in gaps where other lenders will not play. And so again, this is a state-funded agency. We try to take advantage of those opportunities that we can to make deals work.
So, thank you, panelists. So, keep track of what Larry just said. Larry Andrews just said about the capital initiatives that's coming down the pike. Be aware so that your business can take advantage of them. And you talked about, Larry, you talked about working with the banks. There's been a tradition in the capital markets of syndicating deals, of groups working together. It seems like that tradition has gone by for some time, and it's no longer being practiced, which is something I think is very helpful for businesses if a group of investors come together to share the risk and decide to fund a business. What do you see in your space in terms of working with other institutions to get financings done?
So it again is looking for those businesses that can take advantage of capital, and looking at really partnerships. And when I say partnerships, that only is not with banks, it's with investment opportunities, it's with we've got a program right now called Biz Empower, which is using crowdfunding, and sort of really making, plugging in capital in different, and we call it a capital stack, looking at not only from equity all the way up to investments and loans. And so we're really seeing a real change in the way we'll be looking at deals as we move forward, including with banks, because not just one provider is going to provide the capital for what needs to happen. And so we'll be looking at partners in order to make deals work.
Yeah, and same thing with Berkshire Bank. What we do, we're a lending small business administration lender, an SBA lender. So it's really important that we not just work with ourselves, but we work with other institutions such as MGCC, the SBA, local CDFIs, because it's important that it's a team effort. Like my mom always said, can't raise a kid by yourself. You need the community aspect of it. And I think from a banking standpoint, the lending standpoint, it's really important that we work with other local financial institutions to make sure that we're providing a full wraparound services for our entrepreneurs, especially our minority entrepreneurs, because it's like I mentioned before, and I'm really passionate about this, it's really important that we don't work in silos, that we break down these silos, and that we make sure we give the best service and the best opportunities for our small businesses out there, because if you do well, we do well, and if you do well and we do well, our community is going to survive, and then our really prosper, and economic prosperity goes up, and we start breaking down these systemic barriers of poverty. And so what we're trying to do is just work with local nonprofits, local organizations who are doing really cool, innovative things, and then we work with our foundation to make sure we provide financing and access to capital to those nonprofits and organizations, so we can help out our community as a whole.
Justin, what's your take on that, working together with other groups and bringing financings together?
Yeah, thank you. I love this question because we're right in the midst of having some discussions around our second fund, and also as our businesses grow, our portfolio companies grow, we're learning a lot about not just the capital stack, and I'm learning more about debt every day. I did not have access to debt when I was working on my business. At least if I did not know it. But now I do, and I'm starting to understand just how important it is not just to understand the capital stack, but also understand the capital fit, right? Making sure you actually have the right financial product for what you're looking to do within your business. So for our businesses that have assets, we don't trade equity for assets, right? If we're going to have inventory or physical product or good, debt is usually a better tool for that. So how do we work with banks, CDFIs, and other organizations to make sure that along with our equity investments, which is all around growing the operations of the business and scaling teams and talent and technologies, do we also have maybe a debt partner, a debt facility in place to help with inventory, asset management, acquisition, and stuff like that. So understanding the capital fit, when we talk to entrepreneurs, we try to dig into the business to best understand what exactly do you need, and so that way we can decide, okay, how much of this round of funding should be an equity investment, how much of it should be debt of various types, so that way we have the right capital mix, and we aren't reliant, they're not solely reliant upon a single tool, but a collaboration and a set of tools that fit the stage and scale of the business.
So now minority businesses are out there wondering, what do I have to do to get some capital? Please tell us from your respective institutions what it takes for minority businesses to get money from you.
I'll start, and we'll start with the equities and go up the ladder. I'll start with what I think is consistent across the board, and that's have your paperwork right. And by paperwork right, I mean there's a few financial statements that you need to have. You need to have your balance sheet, your income statement. Those are a must, right? You have to have those things in order, whether you need a loan or you're looking to raise capital for your high growth venture or innovation. You definitely want to make sure you have those things in place. Generally speaking, we like to see businesses that are post-product, post-revenue. So there's something in the market, something that you've been able to prove and sell so that you can sell it. And then that there's scale and opportunity to help you grow your businesses and ventures. And so just make sure you have your operational documents in order, your financial documents in order, so that way it makes it easier for these folks in particular to get you money. And then I can do my part in making sure that you have the equity capital that the operational capital and equity capital that you need to grow your business.
Exactly what he said. When it comes to documents, it's really important, and I can't really understate it. And if you don't have those documents, such as your business plan, your financials, your P&Ls, we work with organizations to help you work through that process. That's why I always talked about the wraparound services, because a small business may be passionate about it. I'm really good at cooking and baking, and I don't know where to go or how to start, but I know I'm really good at it. I can sell my product. So we help them with connect them with local nonprofits, organizations to get them that paperwork because they may not understand it and know that. But from our standpoint, we have like 2 tiers. We have our traditional business banking product, which is, and then we have our SBA, which is like 2 years of profits. You need to show 2 years of profit statements and to create a profit to have that line of business. But then, like I said earlier, we have our Futures Fund line of credit, which is a prime interest rated loan. It's a 2-year line of credit. And it can be for any entrepreneur who has around $100,000 in annual revenue, and I've even funded some entrepreneurs and businesses who have under $100,000 in annual revenue. So it's a great product. It's throughout our whole footprint. We're really working hard on that. It was a COVID emergency fund, but now we're working with the bank to make sure we can provide this throughout our whole footprint and not necessarily COVID impacted funds. So we're really excited about these lines of products and services. So it's really important to have your financials in order, make sure you pay your taxes, and then you can have some really low interest debt opportunities here at Berkshire Bank.
Great. Larry?
Again, what they said. But I would say, one is you got to have passion, but passion doesn't get you capital. Your financial discipline does. And so making sure that you have both passion and financial discipline will get you capital.
Great. Well, let's open it up a couple of minutes for some questions. Any questions from the audience? I think we have a virtual. My company is in the final stages of a major lawsuit that will likely bring me over $10 million in court awards. Most likely the defendant will settle rather than going into court. I could really use a loan to pay some of my legal fees. Who among the panelists should I try to contact? I'm not there physically, but I'm online.
Not me.
Yeah, that's a difficult question to answer, especially without the context and everything else around it. So what I would say, just reach out. I can provide my information, and I'll be happy to help you. And if I cannot help you, I'm sure that we can find some organization or another financial institution that can, including a CDFI or any other options. But that's a good question, and I wish you the best of luck on that.
I would just say the fact they reached out, that's awesome, because that's if you don't know, ask. Certainly asking the council. I mean, this is really what the council's for. This is what you're for. And again, I'd be glad to talk with them as well.
Great. Well, the moral of the story is this: ask for the money. Don't be afraid to ask for the money, but be ready. Be ready to meet the requirements that these various institutions have. I want to thank the panel for this great discussion on capital access. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So let's have another hand for our panel. So I want to paraphrase 2 lessons that I hope you got out of this panel discussion. First, like my mother and father used to always tell me, make your friends before you need them. So, reach out to these gentlemen before you need capital, introduce yourself and get to know them. And the second thing my parents always taught me is you only have one chance to make a bad impression. So to their point about making sure that when you show up, you have all your financials and your documents together, please listen to that. That's critically important. I want to thank Michael. I want to thank Ron, Justin, and Larry for a great discussion. I also want to thank Berkshire Bank. Berkshire Bank is one of our corporate members, and I can't share the name of our MBE, but just last week, one of our MBEs got a substantial line of credit from Berkshire Bank, and that MBE is not only certified by us, but also a client at the MBDA Business Center. So they really are walking the walk. And I also want to thank Mass Growth Capital Corporation. They're a corporate member as well, and they're also one of the funders of one of the things we do, which is MBE Development, which is providing through one-on-one consulting and subject matter training, intellectual capital in the form of financial management, marketing, strategic planning, and process improvement. Through the grant we have from Mass Growth Capital, we're able to provide technical assistance to minority-owned businesses in Massachusetts that are trying to get capital from them. So thank you again to all of the panelists, and thank you to those two institutions. The next issue on the program is a very special treat. We're going to have a special interview with David Ortiz. So I actually put on my Boston Red Sox shirt to celebrate this. And David is going to be interviewed by Donna Latson-Gittins, so we're really working her hard today. They are going to be introduced. David's going to be introduced by Pam Ken, who's the Vice President for Community, Alumni, and Player Relations for the Boston Red Sox. And let me just tell you a little bit about Pam before she gets started with introducing David. She was named Vice President of Community, Alumni, and Player Relations for the Boston Red Sox in 2015. Prior to her promotion, she served 3 seasons as Senior Director of Public Affairs with oversight of community, player, and alumni relations, as well as the areas of publications, photography, and archives. She began her Red Sox career as an intern in June of 2000 and received her BS in Sports Management from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. In 2012, Pam was presented with the inaugural Alumni on the Rise Award, which was presented by the Mark H. McCormick Department of Sports Management. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome Pam to introduce David.
Thank you. That was quite an introduction, and I'm actually introducing someone who needs no introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway. So David Ortiz, Big Papi, as you might know him, he joined the Red Sox in 2003, and then he put together an amazing 14-year career in Boston. 10-time All-Star, 3-time World Series champion, 2004 ALCS MVP, 2013 World Series MVP, most clutch hitter in Red Sox history. The list goes on and on. But what you may not know about David Ortiz is during his time playing, he also committed a lot of his time and energy to the David Ortiz Children's Fund, which helps children with heart issues in the Dominican as well as in Massachusetts. And so he even got an award for that in 2011. He was awarded the Roberto Clemente Award, which is the best award you can receive in baseball for a charitable service. So he was already starting to do great things besides playing baseball during his time. During that time playing, he also had some other business ventures that you may have heard about. He was in the restaurant business, the salsa business, but it wasn't until he retired after the 2016 season that he was able to start focusing more on his charitable foundation as well as his businesses. 2 examples of businesses that he has are Big Papi Productions, a television production company, as well as Ortiz 34, which is his brand of kids' gloves, bats, and balls. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce Donna, who's going to have a conversation with David about his businesses and his career.
Now, how about that? Great. Hi, David.
How are you?
I'm doing great. I am thrilled to be the person lucky enough to interview you this morning.
You look great.
Hey, thanks. I have to tell you, I have 2 adult children, and my youngest, who's 31, is like the most crazy Red Sox fan. So when I told her I had the opportunity to interview David Ortiz, she's like, "You have got to be kidding." It is the best thing in the world to see you today. And are you in the Dominican Republic, David?
Yes, yes, I am.
Nice and roasty toasty there. It's cold up here.
Oh, you're not kidding. Right here is 75, sunny. I mean, don't get jealous.
Well, everybody, why don't you all say hello to David? Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Before we begin with the business questions, I'm going to ask you the question that everybody wants to know about. Do you miss playing?
Not at all.
That's not the answer I thought you'd give us. You don't
No,
miss it at all,
actually,
huh?
you know what? I've been playing baseball since I was 9 years old. It was pretty much everything I know. But at some point, as an athlete, you need to know that you have to pass the torch, because unfortunately, in a sport career, it's not forever, because your body at some point start getting banged up and start giving up. I mean, my last year when I played, I know that I can still hit, but my body, on the other hand, through all the struggle and all the grind and all the stuff, I was getting so much pain, and that's why I decided to retire. But reality is, I played 20 years in the big league. That's like 3 careers in baseball. You know what I'm saying? Because not too many people have the opportunity to play for that long, and that's why I be like, I retired under my term. I have fun. I won championship. I did pretty much a lot of good things while I play. So that's why I'm very confident when I say that I don't miss playing. I love the game, and I love watching the game, and I love being involved with the game. But being on the field, doing what I used to do, I know it was time to pass the torch, and that's why I feel the way I feel.
One of the best questions that I heard a reporter ask you was, so what are you going to do when you retire, David? And you said, make lots of money. How's that going?
Well, the thing is that since I was a kid, my family teach me that you gotta stay busy. You gotta, a lot of us, once we are done, we have a career, we pretty much settle down. In my case, I had to stay active. I just don't like to sit down I like to take my breaks, here and there. But I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna take a couple of weeks off, and by the third day, I feel like I have to do something, because I like to stay busy. So I continue working for tons of companies. I got my own. I work on TV. I've been working on TV for the past 6 years. I have a lot going on, but I love it because I like to stay busy.
So what was it like leaping from the glare of baseball lights, the smell of leather of the glove, and the cheers from your fans to just go right into business? Was that a big change for you?
It's a different type of word, you know what I'm saying? Because what I do now, I don't get together, or I don't sit down to be the focus of 45,000 people. Well, at some point it happened when I'm working on TV for Fox. You got 30 million people watching you. And the good thing is about that, and the difference is that when I'm on the field wearing a uniform, playing, and I have 45,000 people plus watching me, they get to know the David Ortiz that can hit the baseball, that can do it all on the field, but they don't get to know David Ortiz's personality. Now, when I do the switchover on TV, I express myself. I like having fun. I love to having a smile on my face at all time. and then people get to know that the guy with the angry face that is looking at the picture kind of funny, that's not his personality. That's only part of the business. You know what I'm saying? But once people get to know my personality, you know, and stuff like that, that bring business to you because now people know that you connect with people, especially the way things are going nowadays. That people is very sensitive about things, but in the other hand, when someone is talk to you about the things that you want to hear, and at the same time have the type of personality that goes with, that's kind of connect with people in a different type of way, and I can call myself lucky when it comes down to it.
All right. Before I ask the next question, I just wanted to ask folks, if you have questions for David, you have index cards, please fill those out. And those who are virtual, just put your question in the chat. So David, we all know that you're featured in several major TV campaigns: Eastern Bank, Zenni eyeglasses, the Sam Adams commercial, your cousin from Boston. You most recently were the star on the World Series for coverage for Fox Sports. With those major sponsorships and TV commitments, how are you making time for your own business and your charitable foundation?
It is crazy. Seems like my day only have 15 hours instead of 24. I'm not a big fan of sleeping. Like if I sleep 5-6 hours, I'm okay with. But you know what? I had a friend, Michael Strahan, that I always ask him those type of questions because the guy is extremely busy. I have him on my podcast the other day, and we were just talking about it because I always watch him very close. He worked at Fox also, but he worked on football, like everybody know. Michael was an incredible football player, and but he did the switchover better than anybody I have ever seen. So it's all about discipline, you know. You take time. You get to be responsible, you know. Like whenever I lined up things with the production company, I try to be on time always and give 110% of whatever the type of energy that they need. And the words just go around. It's the same thing when you don't commit yourself to do the thing the way they expect you to do it. The same thing. I mean, and in my case, like I said, I lined up my schedule. I have my team, Radigan, who is the one who is in charge with bringing all this business to myself. I also work with Fenway Sport Group on some things, but it's pretty much more than the other things that I know how to deal with. I like to get familiar with producer, with company. I like to give them everything I have whenever they need me. And the one thing that I think everybody like about me is the way I approach things. I have a lot of energy. I like to bring the good vibe, the positive vibe to things. And once that spread out, everybody looks good.
What particular skills do you think as a baseball player that you had that you can now apply to your businesses? Is there a particular thing that you know about yourself that you can apply to business?
Well, I wasn't fast enough in baseball. Everybody knows that, but I was very powerful. You know what I'm saying? So whenever I'm getting down with business, I probably don't try to get things done as quick as trying to steal a bag. But when it comes down to be powerful, I try to bring the whole package in so they feel me, you know. So to me, I think what I do, connecting with product. I have a lot of companies approaching me to represent the product, but if I don't connect with, I don't go for. You know what I'm saying? Because I like people. I like that the message that I send to people. I like those messages to make sense. You know what I'm saying? I don't want people to feel like I'm representing something that doesn't go with what I am. You know what I'm saying? So I focus on that a lot.
No, brand, and I'm a marketer, so brand is number one. If you don't have a solid brand, it's very difficult to push forward. And I was going to ask you that question. Not every business person has your brand, your name recognition. So what advice would you have for people who do have a business? What particular things should they pay attention to maintain their reputation in business?
You want to make sure that whatever you put out there is 100% what you are trying to introduce to society. I mean that for example, like I remember one time I ordered this hand-free earpieces like this one that I have to this one Instagram application that I saw, and I ordered it through it because of the color. I like the color because when you go to Apple, they only have this one color, the white one. So I saw that they were blue, red, black, and I was like, oh, I kind of like those. So I ordered it, and the first order, they came, and they worked for about a week, and then it was a disaster. And then I was like, well, let me order another pair. The second pair never shows up. So that basically was telling me that this company was just introducing a product that was not good. And I wonder why Apple doesn't have on their line this type of product. So I figured it out. What I'm trying to tell you is you are responsible for what you want to be out there and for how long. If you want a product to be out there forever, so you put it together the right way. If you want the product to be out there for a month and then disappear, it's all up to you. It's all about the effort and how good the product can be. It's all depend on you. You know what I'm saying? And I emphasize on that a lot.
David, it sounds like there's an Apple opportunity there for you. The David Ortiz earplugs in color.
Probably not.
There you go. So as a powerful and influential person, you had an agent or have a number of agents to manage your negotiations. Now you're your own boss. What are some of the hardest decisions you've had to make in business?
Well, I guess in my case, you get very familiar with your team, the guys that are out there, busting their tail to get the right thing for you. So companies normally grow in a certain way where sometimes you either have to let someone go or somebody get the offer by other company to move on with their life. You know what I'm saying? And for example, I had this kid named Mike who used to work in our company. This guy was perfect for me because Mike, besides his being brilliant, he was on top of my social media. He was on top of a lot of business. And Mike was one of the guys that worked for the owner of the company, who is Alex. So all of a sudden, Mike got to be well known by so many companies that he either battled through it to get me the right deal and this and that. And one of these companies that is developing came and offered Mike the general manager or something like that position. Now you go from being one of the pieces of a company to be the big masterpiece of the company. So when Mike basically came to us and was like, hey, listen, I really appreciate the love and everything that you guys have helped me out with. But, in life, we try to move on. Papi, when you became to be a baseball player, you started in the minor league. And then you went to the big league, and then now you won championship, and then you want to go to the All-Star game, and all of a sudden you want to be whoever you are nowadays, but you were looking forward to it. I am in the same position now, so I'm gonna have to move on and take that opportunity in the one company. When things like that happen, it's hard because you got used to someone who is very it's a masterpiece, and those are decisions that need to be made at some point. So I think in the business side, this is something that it's a game changer sometimes, because now I'm looking for another mic. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, it is what it is, and that and made the decision of who you want to represent and who you doesn't. Those are, I guess, the two part of the business that you have to put away, that is not easy to do.
That's a testament to you that he, grew to that level that other people want him. So bravo to you too. You should take some credit
Oh,
for that.
definitely.
Yeah. I'm going to ask one more question. And again, encourage everybody, if you have a question for David, to write it down. I have one question here about your children's fund that raises millions of dollars for children's health care in the Dominican Republic and New England. Can you tell us about that work and why you believe so much in giving back?
Well, everything began, like, I would say 13, 14 years ago, where I come from a family that financially we basically don't have much. I can call myself lucky enough being one of the few baseball player growing up, that my family tried to well educate me and give me the right reasons to be, someone that is a plus for society and stuff like that. So my mom and my dad, they emphasize a lot on me, going to school and getting things done. And in the middle of it, the being a baseball player came out of nowhere. And at some point I had to start school. I was 1 year away from graduating from high school to begin to be a professional baseball player. And like, to make long story short, I basically got the memo early, coming from my family. Education is the most important thing. Now I apply that into my kids. I have this 170-year-old at home that he had the incredible talent and opportunity to be a baseball player, and he probably get an offer to be drafted out of high school. But in my mind, I lined up for him to go to college and make a career and get to be drafted out of college. So he had like a second weapon, second card, wild card, that he can use in case the baseball career doesn't goes along the way you expect. Because a lot of friends of mine that give their whole life to the sport, baseball, basketball, whatever, once they don't make it to the big league, their age is already catching up, and now you don't have the preparation, the degrees to go back to school or do whatever you want, and a lot of us end up being frustrated in life because we didn't complete one or the other. You know what I'm saying? So now what I try to do is, make sure my kids understand that. But on the other hand, coming from a poor family, basically, I know how important health is for families, because it doesn't matter if you are rich or poor. Whenever the opportunity comes for you to deal with a sick child, especially if your financial statement is pretty bad, it's something that is hard even to see it. So I remember I went to this one hospital down here in the Dominican a long time ago, and they had this empty room with two kids that they basically were my kids' age at the time, that they were basically, they went through the pre-surgery but then there's a post-surgery that it was needed to be complete, but the financial statement wasn't there. And I was about to go to spring training that year, and I committed myself to try to raise some fund to help these kids financially to get their surgery done and stuff like that. And I was lucky enough to play for a city like New England. That's why New England to me is like my second home, because New England always support me so much in the things that I want to do. I remember I raised that year like $200,000 and I brought it to the hospital. But then once I did that, that was when the idea came from my team to create the David Ortiz Children Fund. So we organize everything the way it's supposed to be. So now you're gonna raise funds, people gonna donate and stuff like that. You know how that goes. So we created, and we've been doing it since. Over 10,000 kids has been benefit from this foundation. Over 1,000 kids has been getting their surgery done. We have a lot going on now. On the 19th, 20, and 21st, we have the big event for the foundation close to Fort Myers, where we have the David Ortiz golf event, where we raise funds to continue getting surgery done for kids and here in the Dominican and up in New England. And I'm telling you, like, I guess that's one of my biggest home runs, because I love helping people. I'm crazy about kids, like children. Like when I'm around kids, I feel like I'm a kid again, you know what I'm saying? Because that's the way I am. But I love doing that, you know. It's something that I feel like it's part of what I am, to be honest with you.
Thanks, David. Now, do we have any questions from the audience or from our folks who are online? Bring a few questions down here. Can you fill out the card? Thank you.
I wake up with this crazy hair today, so don't look at me.
Someone has written, nice to hear about your philanthropic efforts. Do you have similar interests like Michael to get into media and TV? You know, like Michael Strahan. Are you in line to have your own morning show or an afternoon soap?
You know what? Michael, on the other hand, we had a conversation about it. He said, you have the perfect personality to do all that. The thing is with me that I need to, if I decide to do that at some point, I'm gonna have to cut off some of my time on some of the things. I would love to at some point, you know what I'm saying, once I get to be settled with so many things that I had going on a couple of years from now. But it'll be good. It'll be a good experience, because when I'm working on TV, I have fun, you know, and that's what people like to see, you know, the public that I connect to right now, the audience that I connect to. It's a lot of them, they're not even baseball fans, but the feedback that you get from these people is like, man, you know, like, you guys are doing a great job, and you guys are really entertainer and stuff like that, and that kind of opens up windows for some other things, you know, and I have people approaching me to do those other things, and just taking my time to
watch during the World Series, that's for sure. So someone else mentions talent, hard work to get to the top of your game. What advice would you give to work through the grind of business to be successful? This is from Ant from KT&T. Is that right? Yeah. What advice would you give to someone, just the daily grind? What do you do to keep your spirits up? What would you tell them to do to keep being a success?
Well, discipline to me is the most important thing. The discipline that you have when discipline is like the umbrella that covers so many other areas. You know what I'm saying? Like when you talk about when you emphasize on discipline, and then here comes the focus, the energy, the how. For example, if I had to wake up at 7 a.m. to do a shoot or a photo shoot or commercial for something, or deal with companies for 3, 4 hours or whatever, I know that I need to have the discipline, go to sleep early the day before so that I can have the type of energy that I need to put up with that. So that's why I tell you that discipline covers so many areas. Once you have the discipline to know the importance of the things that you want to do, everything come out easier. You know what I'm saying? But if you don't have the discipline, then you lose the focus, you lose the opportunity to connect with some of the people, and that's when you don't last longer on that area.
Thank you. Does anybody have any other questions? No? Well, David, thank you so very much for taking the time to be with us today. Fantastic. Nice to meet you in person, sort of.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Have a great day.
You too.
So, thank you, Donna, and thank you, Big Papi. For those of you who are, serious baseball fans, you understand the importance of pitching, the significance of a double play that's well executed, the strategy that a manager has and executes throughout the game. But if you're a casual fan, the only thing you really get are the long ball, the home run, especially when the game is on the line in a big series. And so Big Papi is the epitome of someone who's delivered time and time again for the Red Sox when the game is on the line in a big game. So we really appreciate him sharing his thoughts with us, and we appreciate him sharing the transition he's made from being a successful baseball player to now an entrepreneur. I'd like to first of all, let everyone know we're going to have lunch when we finish. But before we close, I just want to offer a few words of thanks. Most importantly, I want to thank Mark Lev. Mark was the driving force behind making this happen today. And if you think about it, we got all of those sports organizations here because of Mark. We're here in the pavilion because of Mark. Mark and his team deserve an incredible round of applause. So let's give it to Mark Lev. So I also want to thank the Fenway Sports Management Group and the Boston Red Sox for being our host, for being our partner. This has been an incredible event. And as I mentioned earlier, sports is a big business in this country today. And so to the extent that, Mark was able to organize a panel that will share and did share with everyone how to do business with sports organizations locally, I think is huge because the sports economy is only going to get larger and larger and larger. COVID-19 has made us all realize how much we miss sports and how much we appreciate it now that it's back. So let's give a big round of applause to Fenway Sports Manager and the Boston Red Sox. I want to thank my good friend Sean Wooden for participating in this event. He's a very busy man, and his insights on access to capital and what it's going to take for corporate America to be an agent for change, I think was very, very important. I want to thank our annual sponsors. They were flashing on the screen as we geared up to have this event today, and they're really important to us because they keep the lights on. They allow us to do the work we do, which is very important in terms of minority business development. I want to thank my board of directors. One of my board members was here earlier. They provide us with oversight and guidance and support, and they're very important. I want to thank Donna Latson-Gittins. We really work her hard, if you can tell. She's probably going to, ask for more stock options and a larger bonus, and we'll have to look into that. But Donna, thank you for all you have done for this event and all you do in general for the council, for the Red Sox, and for the greater Boston community. We really appreciate you. I want to thank my hardworking and talented staff. The Greater New England Council is not Peter Hearst. It's really, whatever success we can achieve, it's because we have individuals who really are committed to our goals of economic inclusion and minority business development. So I want to thank all of the staff. If they could just stand up so for the folks here in the room, they can see them. And they're hiding behind the back, so come out so everyone can see you. And finally, I want to thank all of you who attended, either in person or virtually. And as we break for lunch, I just want to share one final statistic with you. You can tell from my presentation, I'm a really data-driven person. I'm an accountant by training. I was an investment banker and a commercial banker, so I really am into numbers. So I'm going to share one final number with you that I think is critically important. I mentioned to you that an organization prepared our economic impact study at the end of 2019. That same organization partnered with my colleague who runs the Michigan Council, Michelle Suri Robinson, and they did an additional study this year, and that study concluded that at the current rate of spending by the current corporate and public sector with minority businesses, it's going to take 333 years to reduce the racial wealth gap. Now, I'm a lot older than I look, but I don't have 333 years. What they also concluded is that if the public sector and the private sector increase spending with minority-owned businesses, remember I shared that slide with you that there are 1 million minority-owned businesses in this country with employees. If the public sector and the private sector increase their spending with minority-owned businesses by 5 to 6 times over current levels, you could reduce the time necessary to get to equity from 333 years to 15 years. Now, if I keep doing everything right, I should make it 15 years. So ladies and gentlemen, as we leave today and grab our lunch, let's keep in mind that all of us should encourage everyone we know who is a leader in the public sector and the private sector to do something in 15 years, because Peter Hearst isn't going to make it 333 years. Thank you very much. Grab some lunch.